The anticipated 1.1 banners are arriving soon, and with that, 2 amazing 5 stars are being released. The great debuffer Silver Wolf and Luocha, who is the second imaginary character we'll have, who happens to be a healer as well. How's it going, everyone? This is Kay, and I'll break down their skills, strengths, weaknesses, and who you should pull for. Keep in mind, the skill effects and numbers can change as these characters aren't officially released yet, so please keep that in mind. So, despite the nerf she received, Silver Wolf is still quite impressive. She's a Nihility unit with a very unique skill, but before that, her basic deals single target damage, but thanks to her talent, she has a chance to implant a bug on enemies, which I'll talk about later. Moving on to her skill, it's a single target with the ability to add an element weakness to the enemy, which can lead to some amazing plays. The chosen element is random and is based on your team. This can be very beneficial to mono teams or duo elements teams, as you can manipulate the chances of getting the desired weakness. Now, the skill also reduces damage resistance to the chosen element by 20%, but keep in mind, enemies usually have a 20% resistance to non-weakened elements to begin with. They'll have even more resistance if they specialize in a specific element, sometimes reaching 30 to 40% resistance. If the enemy has normal weakness towards an element, then it's 0% damage resistance, so Silver Wolf's skill just evens it out. But if, for example, an enemy has 40% fire resistance, then if the chosen element from her skill is fire, the enemy will retain 20% fire damage resistance. And if the enemy already has natural weakness towards an enemy, then her skill won't shred the damage resistance. But that's okay, she does have an additional debuff that shreds all types of resistance, so it's not element specific, and that is a great debuff in itself. Now, her skill will only allow 1 weakness implanted on each enemy, which was where the nerf came into play, because before this, there was no limit to how many weaknesses she can implant, which made her absolutely broken. Her ultimate is a single target that deals damage while having a chance to debuff defense, helping your team deal overall more damage. Her talent creates a random bug which can either debuff attack, defense, or speed every time she attacks, which includes her basic skill and ult, so there's a chance to debuff the enemy with more than one of the random effects. Majority of the time, you're hoping to get that defense debuff to synergize with her other defense downs. It's overall a very solid passive effect. Her technique attacks the target on the map and shreds toughness of all enemies as it ignores specific elemental weaknesses. Her traces expands on her debuffs. Generate gives the bugs an extra turn and can add another bug when breaking enemies. Inject extends the implanted weakness for a turn, and side note can further decrease resistance if enemies have 3 or more debuffs stacked after she uses her skill. The greatest strength Silver Wolf offers is allowing you to use teams that enemies aren't normally weak against. We all have that problem where in a battle or two, we didn't bring enough characters that are effective against enemies. With her, you won't have to worry about that. Now, since the weakness debuff is randomized based on your team, you can't fully control it, but as mentioned before, you can manipulate this to increase the odds. Let's say by having all quantum team members, or a triple ice team, which raises the chances that the debuff will be ice. Even a dual element team can help. You obviously don't want to just bring all randomized elements to battle. For example, if the enemy is weak against fire, lightning, and quantum, don't bring quantum, imaginary, physical, and a wind. That's just way too random. Instead, another method to manipulate things would be a team consisting of fire, lightning, quantum, and wind, in which case Silver Wolf will always apply wind weakness since the enemy already has natural weakness against the other 3 elements. This was according to gameplay footage from beta where she applied wind weakness every single time, making Dan Heng as a DPS more effective. Now, we don't know if this sort of team manipulation will work upon release though, so keep that in mind. Regardless, you don't want to have too many different elements on your team when using Silver Wolf. Try to keep it to a minimum. Another great thing about her is that since her skill debuff lasts multiple turns, she's not too skill point hungry once enemies are affected, which makes management a lot easier. A major weakness for Silver Wolf is her single target nature. It'll be great for single boss battles, but when battling a group of enemies or bosses that summons enemies, especially if all of them has high HP, this can result in her being somewhat slow at times. Overall, Silver Wolf is a character that will improve as more characters are released, thus making her extremely future-proof. Even from a free-to-play standpoint, she's quite amazing since she can allow you to use almost any units in your possession. Next is Luocha, who is a healer, so we all know how valuable they are. But on top of that, if you don't have wealth, then his imaginary element can be very helpful. Starting with his basic, it's a single target imaginary, nothing too special. His skill heals an ally scaling off of his attack, not HP like Bailu or Natasha, so Luocha is going to be somewhat of a damage dealer too. He also gains an Abyss Flower stack, which ties to his talent. What's great is that if someone's HP is 50% or lower, he will automatically heal them and it doesn't use his skill points. This can save lives, but it does have a downtime. His ult is an AoE that not only does damage, but also removes a buff from all enemies. This ability is very helpful for harder quests, especially when bosses uses a lot of buff either on themselves or enemies they summon. Additionally, he'll generate 1 Abyss Flower stack. So why is the flower stacks important? Well, for his talent, when he has 2, Luocha uses them to create a field for 2 turns. When characters attack an enemy within the field, the attacker gets healed. This ability is great for sustainability since your characters will constantly recover HP. His technique can come in handy, especially in the simulator universe, where maybe you don't have access to healing right away. For traces, Luocha can remove a debuff from your ally when his skill is triggered. So not only does he remove buffs from enemies, but he can also help a bit with debuffs. He's looking to be a very solid utility character. Now, Sanctifield is quite amazing. When attacking enemies while the field is active, all other characters will receive small healing. The attacker doesn't receive this healing from this trace effect, but the attacker will naturally be healed by his talent regardless, so basically, everyone recovers HP whenever you attack. It's a very strong ability to keep HP high, which results in better survivability. Additionally, his A6 trace effects helps against CC debuffs, which is great to keep him active since he is your healer after all. Luocha has a lot of value, at least for now, being the only other imaginary character and a 3rd healer in the game. He can help a lot, especially in Memory of Chaos, where you sort of need 2 healers. Now, he does have his flaws. Aside from his auto-healing ability from his skill, which only targets 1 character, has a cooldown period, and only heals when the ally's HP is 50% or lower, compared to Natasha and Bailu, Luocha cannot heal all allies mid-enemy turns like the other 2. Healing comes from his skill and talent, both requiring your turn. Natasha and Bailu can use their ults whenever you need to, which is valuable when enemies chain their attacks. So between Silverwolf and Luocha, who should you pull for? Unfortunately, since the game is still so new, there isn't a clear-cut winner just yet, but instead, there are specific scenarios that you have to take into account. If you want to go for a more future-proof character, Silverwolf wins because of her weakness debuff, which is very strong for free-to-play players, and as more characters get released, more synergy and combos can be formed, unless of course, Hoyo decides to replicate her ability in the future, but Silverwolf will have value for a very long time. Her natural defense debuff and being able to help any elements makes her splashable into any teams. Of course, as mentioned, you need to build specific teams based on elements, but again, as more characters get released, the more options you'll have. Mono teams and duo teams will be very effective, and Silverwolf will become irreplaceable. At least, that's what we're hoping for. Now, I'm not saying Luocha isn't future-proof or good in the long run. He's a damage-dealing healer who can remove buffs and debuffs, making him a great utility character. Unfortunately, once more healers and imaginary characters get released, and depending on how good they are, we may or may not see a drop in Luocha's effectiveness. Now, obviously, this is speculation on both characters, but the chances of Hoyo releasing more healers and imaginary are a lot higher than a new character who can apply weakness in a similar way Silverwolf does. But because healers are so vital at this stage of the game, and the fact that we only have 2, one being a 5-star that's not a lot of people have, myself included, it makes Luocha very desirable and highly recommended over Silverwolf. Pull for him if you don't have Bailu or at the very least a super built out Japard. Right now, Luocha can offer a lot more. Now, if you do have Bailu or you can make do with just Natasha and you want to have a character that will get progressively better as time goes on, then Silverwolf is a must pull. This is why I said the answer isn't as clear cut at this stage of the game. As an imaginary healer, Luocha offers great support and is beneficial to everyone, and can become a huge asset. On the other hand, Silverwolf is a one-of-a-kind debuffer who can help every existing character and future characters. As mentioned before, this helps a lot of free-to-play players who may or may not have all the best options. If you are struggling with beating bosses and it's because you lack effective elements, not because you're underleveled, then Silverwolf will help. I'd recommend going for Luocha for now and wait for Silverwolf's rerun in the future, which will happen, no doubt about it. I'm not saying she isn't good right now, she is, but you'll just get more of Luocha. But comment down below to let me know who you're pulling for on the 1.1 banners, or perhaps you're saving for Kafka and Blade. Let me know. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for future Star Rail videos. While you're at it, check out my Star Rail guides on Welt, Jingyuan, Tingyun, and Yanqing. Have a great day everyone, good luck on your pulls, till next time.